Good afternoon, welcome to the Midday Mull for Wednesday, the 11th of November. Continuing to reflect on the prayer that Jesus taught us, where he tells us to pray, "Thy kingdom come, thy will be done." And we thought a bit about the will of God yesterday, and just to continue that thought a little today. When we say thy will be done on earth, that would be in our lives. Thy will be done. Now, God doesn't depend on us giving him permission for his will to be done. His will is going to be done anyway. Everything we believe happens according to the will of God. But sometimes it's a bit difficult to get our heads around. Some years ago, quite high up priest in the neighboring diocese made a comment. His daughter had been tragically killed in a motor vehicle accident. There'd been a blowout of a tyre and the car had rolled, and she and one other student who were travelling with her died. And he said he couldn't imagine that this could be the will of God. And I can understand a parent thinking that. I haven't been in that kind of situation, but I can imagine if you're going through something like that in your life, you'll be hard-pressed to see the will of God in that. But I stopped and I thought, well, if God wasn't in control, if this didn't fit in with his will, that's a far more unsettling situation, because what else might happen that is outside of his will? And what was God doing when it did happen? Does he suddenly wake up and go, oh my goodness, what a disaster, look what's happened there? And suddenly, in that perspective, everything else starts unraveling. And instead we recognize that in all things, not just the good things that happen in our lives, but all things form part of the will of God. And a little earlier today, I was listening to a recording of somebody talking about the background to Horatio Spafford's "It Is Well With My Soul" and the disaster that happened. And he's able to see, despite that, God was in control, and his life and the life of his family, despite having lost his 4 daughters, God was still in control. And although they weren't with him, he knew they were with God. And so he could see God's will in that situation. And so as we pray, your will be done, it's a challenge to us to how we understand our lives and what is going on in our personal life, in the world, in everything. To say, we don't see it, but God is in control. This is God's will. I might not be able to explain how it fits together. It might make absolutely no sense to me. I might be totally confused and confounded, and I might struggle to accept it. But if it's not God's will, then it's even far more difficult. And so my prayer is, as you go through your day, as you go through life, in all things that we experience, rejoice in the good and say, God, this comes from you. All good things come from the Father. But when we are in those difficult places and the valleys are dark and the threats are real and the storm clouds are overhead, and we might feel that we can't go on, and we might feel that we've been robbed of everything, we need at that point to cling on and say, it doesn't make sense, but God, this is still your will. And I'll cling to that with the confidence that one day, in eternity, I will understand it. Even if today I rebel against the idea and it makes no sense, and I want to say no, it is still your will. And therefore, we can know that nothing happens by accident, and we are never left alone. And the devastation that we might experience does not surprise God. And he will make allowances, and he will be there for us, and he will extend his grace to us in that situation, because that is part of his will. So as you pray this prayer, wrestle with the issues, but know that God is there. He is in control, and therefore we are blessed.